Thank you for joining us. We have a great session today, going to be covering our kind of growth strategy for market domination using your email list. This is a strategy that some of the largest companies in the world are using. Trade Desk does this with their publication, The Current. HubSpot does this with The Hustle, which they purchased. Robinhood does this with their media property, Sherwood Media and Robinhood Snacks. The biggest companies out there are using this strategy to absolutely supercharge their business. And we're going to go into why, and we're going to go into how. Who is beehiiv? beehiiv powers the world's top newsletters. We are the best newsletter platform on the market. We are becoming, every day as we ship more and more features and more tools, the place for you to launch and to scale and to monetize any kind of digital content-based business. And so that's really our vision between our newsletter builder, our website, and our ad network. Our goal is to be almost like the Shopify for digital businesses, whereas like right now, Shopify is the Shopify for e-com businesses. There really is no central player that can unite the ecosystem for digital content business. And that's really where we're playing. With our new website builder, we'll be launching support natively for digital storefronts and products. So selling coaching courses, products, calls, anything like that will be available certainly within the next 6 months. I think we're targeting Q2 for that. But essentially, beehiiv will be the place to run your business online if that's what you're doing. So I think many of us here are focused on digital commerce. So I think you're in the right place. Who am I? I'm the head of growth over here at beehiiv. I joined the company as the first employee back in February of 2021, where I then growth from basically 100 users to over 500,000 users today. MRR from $3,000 to over, what are we at now? 1.3 million, 16 million in AR. So been around the blocks, been there, seen that. I've seen thousands of newsletters grow. I've seen probably 4 or 5 dozen newsletters start on beehiiv and get acquired for up to 8 figures. 2 of my 4 interns each have started and exited a newsletter. My third intern, the third of those 4 interns still works with us full time. And rather than exiting his newsletters, has built a newsletter empire. I don't personally operate a newsletter myself full time. I've seen it done hundreds, if not thousands of times, and can give you the advice needed to get it going. Even my girlfriend starts newsletters. I'm just like I'm the oracle for everyone around me. Why is everyone launching newsletters? I saw a comment earlier in the chat saying that newsletters are becoming popular again. And let me see if I can find that exact quote, because it was a good one. Not sure if you're ready to start a newsletter, but they're becoming more and more popular again, which is true. And if you read someone like Nicholas Taleb, you'll appreciate the idea that things that have longevity have that momentum or have that longevity for a reason. And when you have that longevity, more often than not, more likely than not, that concept or that entity will continue to have longevity. And when you look at email has been around pretty much as long as the internet has existed. And despite basically every year, it seems like for the last 25, 30 years, people saying that email is dead, email has never been more effective than ever. We see this, we have to look no further than the stuff going on with TikTok and the ban/unban of TikTok. You can look at the different things with algorithms going on today where algorithms shape what we actually see. You could look at the issues around monetization and platforming and deplatforming. Email doesn't have any of those issues. With email, you own your audience one-to-one. You own that relationship and you can control that relationship. And that's really why email at this point in time is really having its resurgence. Aside from that, you have reliable distribution. When you have an email list, you have very tight visibility and control over how users see and consume your content. You can see the open rate. You can see who opened it. You can see who saw it. You can see all of these things, which in kind of the world of big data of social media platforms and traditional media, certainly, you're basically have that visibility in a world where anonymous content consumption has become the norm. Related to that, first-party data in the world where privacy regulations are becoming more and more common. GDPR in Europe, CCPA in California, as well as similar privacy regulations in a dozen states here in the US, and then a dozen more regulations in other parts of the world. Owning that first-party data has never been more important and more valuable. It's really the key. And as a marketer for the last 10 years who has relied almost exclusively on first-party data, I've never had a problem finding results because if you own that first-party data, you're able to feed that into the engine, you will succeed. You'll be able to give those tools the data that they require in order to be successful in terms of ad platforms in terms of optimization algorithms. Fourth, data portability. Unlike places like Instagram or TikTok, where if you want to switch platforms, there's no way to really bring your subscribers to one or the other. Like your best bet is to just say, hey, sign up for my other platform over here. You have complete data portability with an email list. If you don't like beehiiv, or if we're not serving you, you can just take your business elsewhere. You can take your list, you can take all of your data somewhere else. Now, not all platforms let you do that and give you that data portability like beehiiv does, but we do. And that forces us to show up every day and basically provide a service that is worth your business. Fifth, I skipped two there. Fifth, email in the kind of a world of increasing distraction is an incredibly effective and focused medium. When you're reading an email, that is the only thing that's occupying your screen or your time. Now, you may be distracted. You may need to practice a little bit of mindfulness to get in the headspace. But when you are reading an email, that is the only thing typically on your screen and in front of your face. That's different than like a news feed or anything else like where you might have display ads and whatnot across other forms of advertising. And that kind of leads to it being an incredibly valuable and effective medium. And lastly, email is very performant. It drives 175% more conversions in terms of efficiency than social media. I think maybe we've all heard the kind of statistic that every dollar invested in email returns $42 to your bottom line. I heard that years ago, so that might be more by now, but it is incredibly performant. Spent a lot of time on that slide. I'm probably going to move through some of these coming up a little bit more quickly because I believe I have somewhere like 70 slides to get through. When I do mine during the week, I usually have 12 and it takes me a whole hour. And then somehow I get on and I do these presentations and I get through 70 in 50 minutes. I don't know how it works, but anyway. So following off on that, why is a newsletter like the appropriate approach to do this? Well, and how are users applying newsletters to reach their goals? So one is through a standalone newsletter product, which allows you to build your status as a trusted voice in the space. Second is you can use them to nurture leads, which is basically continuously showing up and leveraging that authority to build the mind space in your users' perspective. And the third is education and retention. So educating your users about the challenges they may face, as well as solutions that are available to them. Those different stages of the marketing funnel, education and retention, so top of funnel role, awareness and consideration, nurturing, so this is more consideration and conversion, and that's all delivered through the week in and week out of a newsletter. Cool. So in terms of us, our platform for success has been, or our roadmap for success has been like this: 38 months, we've gone from 0 to 15 million ARR, 0 to 11,000 active sending newsletters, more than 40,000 monthly senders, 600,000 people who have signed up for the platform, and 1.5 million visitors, built from scratch. And so what I'm going to be presenting further is how we're going to basically move forward. And our internal journey is to basically double this business this year. And we do so by serving you guys. And this is the playbook that people are running to do that. Yeah, cool. Awesome. This looks very similar to one of the ones I run internally. I was curious. I was making sure that I didn't accidentally change tabs to the wrong one. Okay. Strategic pillars for success with newsletters. One is really reaching kind of who are you? Identifying who you are as a sender is one of the keys here. So one, side hustlers. Are you a side hustler? Are you an up and coming newsletter operator? Are you an established publisher or media brand? Are you a traditional media operator? Are you a startup? So these are all great personas that we can serve and will be very valuable as you, or will be a good use case for beehiiv as you go through. I'd say also included in here in the side hustlers are up and coming newsletter operators. In that kind of space could be consultants, could be founders if you're trying to build a founder-led brand. Be interested for people to drop in the chat. Who are you as a person? What kind of persona are you in this world? And so when you are one of these people, what you want to do is basically use your newsletter to connect with your audience through a relevant brand voice rather than that faceless kind of corporation or faceless brand that is just not effective in the digital world. The second step is then to use that kind of brand to connect with users where they are, whether it's social media, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, it could be offline as well. This is going to form the foundation for your distribution of growth for your newsletter. And then finally, like capturing individuals searching for information. If you have budget for paid through PPC, capturing users as they're searching for those things. TikTok SEO is obviously a huge thing there. So real quick, as I go here, let's see. We got business for leadership, development, executive coaching, 3 newsletters, content creator, up and coming, founder led, cool, early stage. Sweet. So we have a bunch of people who are like very early stage, up and coming newsletter. That's like kind of the perfect stage to launch this newsletter because the newsletter can really grow with you as your business grows. When you are one of these personas, the idea is you can create a standalone asset that's going to educate, engage, entertain, and provide value to that target audience. The idea here is not to use this standalone product as a sales vehicle to just be hammering people with sales information or to just be a long form sales letter. That will not work. That is not the strategy here. The goal here is to understand what it is that your audience wants to organically consume as far as content goes and create that content without the expectation necessarily that you're going to be able to hammer them with sales. And if you look at the examples I shared before, the current morning Robinhood Snacks, HubSpot, we'll get into exactly how that works. But each of these platforms, none of them is like about what they're actually selling. Hustle is not about CRM. Robinhood Snacks is not about, it's about the market, but it's not specifically like trading tips. And the current is not about advertising per se. It's not about like how to be a better media buyer or how to, as well, I don't think we cover the current, so I'll go into a little bit there in terms of the examples. But like the current, for example, is a news publication run by the Trade Desk, which is an advertising platform. And if you go to their site, maybe Tony can drop the link in the chat. If you go to their site, it looks like a regular news site. I thought it was a regular news site. And then I realized in the bottom where the copyright is copyrighted for the Trade Desk that it is a completely owned, almost like a propaganda outlet. But it doesn't feel that way. It feels like you're reading real content. And I discovered it completely organically because I was searching for a advertising related term and I stumbled upon it. I thought it was a completely organic source. And that's the type of like perfect execution of one of these kind of strategies where you want to create content that your audience is going to organically find and find valuable and want to continue more. If you are in the leadership and development coaching business, you don't necessarily want to create content that's, hey, here's this great job I can do for you coaching. You're going to figure out what is your niche, first of all? Who are your coaches that you work best with? Generally, I would imagine it's not just going to be every executive. So do you do CEOs? Is it marketing leaders? Is it sales leaders? Is it CEOs in a particular market? The more specific you can get with that, the more targeted you can get with your messaging and understanding what users are going to want to read about. Milk Road is not owned by a company, but one of the great examples here is in terms of a newsletter that grew and provided that value and is now the media arm for the company that bought it is Milk Road. So with Milk Road, they have just a completely editorial publication that just provides value to people who are interested in crypto. It started out a little bit more niche, like 2.5, 3 years ago. They were one of our first clients and now has evolved to be a little bit more mass market. But understanding the niche of people who want daily crypto information, more and through a humorous lens, that's how they started off and they delivered on it. Basically the morning brew of crypto. And from there have now expanded to be this much larger organization that does much more than just the newsletter. So I could have just read from this. Started in January 2022 with 0 subscribers or content, discovered that content format and grew to 250,000 subscribers in just 10 months and was acquired for 10 figures. This is one that it could be really relevant to some of the folks who are running more of like a coaching thing. But if you were interested, if your audience was IT leaders, this would be the case study that I would recommend for you here. This is an IT support group. Is a newsletter that basically provides humorous spin on IT topics. So this would be basically for anybody who's an IT professional, be following it, and you can use that then to get really specific with your audience. So in this case, they're not using this as like a lead gen tactic. They're running it as an actual newsletter. So finding a niche, these IT professionals that they can provide value to, only 14,000 subscribers, but generating more than $80,000 a year just from ads and other forms of monetization within. Yeah, so Linda, this presentation today is going to be more about the strategy behind like how you can deploy these tactics. Certainly beehiiv is one of the great places to do this, but frankly, the tech is not as specific. We obviously want you to be on beehiiv because we do it the best, but the idea is basically to really nail it because we don't actually see many people executing on these strategies. This is really the hard part. It's the platform. Once you have the platform in mind, it's like the easy part. But yeah, we can move through these. Yeah. This isn't meant to be more of like a sales call for, hey, why should you use beehiiv? It's more to provide value. And I can certainly give more of the pitch at the very end. But at this point, like what we want to do more of is basically describe how you can be actually creating value for your business and succeeding. And whether you choose to use beehiiv or not, hopefully the presentation shows you that we know what the hell we're doing and that we understand the challenges that you face. But we'll want to leave that choice up to you guys. Either way. So we can show here that, the first one was standalone newsletter product. This is basically just creating value, can be its own standalone thing, generating revenue through ads, through premium subscriptions, through affiliate links. This could be an approach that you take in order to just create a diversified revenue stream is really the main thrust there. Second step, nurturing leads. So this is maybe more if you are wanting to launch this to really communicate with your user base and basically build a business. I want to say none of these are mutually exclusive. These are all kind of elements of it. And we recommend the best ones that execute this the best do all three. So if you look at HubSpot monetizes through the hustle. They are doing multiple things. It's not just like one approach. But using your newsletter to nurture leads, you can optimize your newsletter for subscriptions so you can educate and nurture leads. This is really where we're going to get into the weeds of how HubSpot does this effectively to really bring down and show a massive ROI on their marketing spend. The main points here are that it's much easier and cheaper to optimize for newsletter subscriptions than it is for selling a service. If you can imagine, if you are a coach and you're trying to get me as a client, do you think it's going to be easier to sell me a $1,500 a month coaching package or a $500 session coaching package? Or do you think it's going to be easier to get me to sign up for your newsletter? Obviously, the answer is it's going to be easier for me to subscribe to your newsletter. And the idea here is once you have me subscribed, if you can provide value, if you can convey to me that what the hell you're talking about, like I'm doing with you guys today, you are more likely to want to purchase from me and buy from me because that I'm walking the walk, that I'm not just talking the talk and trying to make a sale, that in this coaching scenario, if I'm providing that value, imagine if I'm giving away this value for free, what value is locked behind the door and how can this person help me? Just one example in the coaching business that's just like super surface level, but you can really start to understand how this can be super valuable. Building this as a brand outside of your normal kind of like name brand thing also builds this stronger brand halo and affinity. You hear about all of these influencers and all of these people who are very successful. None of them has one single revenue stream and one single business. They all have multiple businesses, multiple revenue streams that they're using that in many cases complement each other. So you can still have your main email list and your main business around your coaching business, but having this kind of third party or external media source that you can use to build your authority and do so in a little bit of a less biased way can be really effective for building that brand and trust. On top of that, the newsletter can, if you are truly providing value, is going to grow organically over time. Imagine if you're just talking about your business and how much your business can do to support and sell, that's not compelling to the end user. They're not going to want to subscribe to you. They're not going to want to engage. But if you're actually providing value, they'll share with their coworkers. And we see that all the time. Lastly, a more educated customer is a much, much more likely to convert into a conversion down the road because they know the things that they're missing, the challenges that they're maybe not foreseeing. And it makes the sales job down the road easier. So I would say one of the broader points here is that this is not a silver bullet thing. It's not like you're going to start your newsletter today and you're going to turn on your spigot of leads tomorrow. Similar to SEO, it takes a little bit of time to build up that authority, but also similar to SEO, it's the type of thing, once you've built up the momentum, it's very hard to stop that flywheel. And that's why the best time to start a newsletter was like a year ago. The next best time is today. You start up this flywheel and it's going to be very hard to slow it down, and it provides an extremely compelling competitive advantage. So quick math, HubSpot Enterprise starts at roughly $60,000 a year. Their average lifetime is 2 years, and you assume that they want to hit a 3x ROAS on their ad spend. It means their cost to acquire a user could be like $40,000. So if you're running ads, if you're doing events, if you're doing all of these things, that means that HubSpot could be spending $40,000 to acquire a single enterprise user. That means that if you're looking at this in the context of a newsletter economic, only 1 in 20,000 subscribers would need to convert to make basically a newsletter a co-equal channel with their existing behavior. And that's assuming like a $2 average subscription cost. That's like super high. A lot of times if you're working with somebody or you know how to run ads, you can get that down to $1.20, even down to $1, even sub $1 in some cases. I don't want to promise sub $1 because that's very difficult, but definitely down to $1.20, $1.40. But that just goes to show that if you're investing in your business and your CAC, it doesn't have to be $40,000. It can be a $2,000 or $3,000 cost to acquire. But you have to start thinking about your business the same way that like tech and SaaS companies look at it when they're doing media buying and when they're building their businesses. If you are investing all of this money to get customers, it's going to be way easier instead of going and trying to just knock on those doors directly to basically bring people in and convert them over time. Again, this is like probably the biggest thing if we're talking about businesses and what you guys are trying to build as coaches and different types of like founder-led businesses. 0.0 conversion rate is absurdly low. I don't know if you guys are in marketing. You guys probably have some marketing adjacent. Usually your conversion rates are going to be about 3. And for a newsletter sign-up conversion rates, if you're driving somebody to a website, should be close to 50%. You should be collecting 50% of the emails that you send to a landing page. From there, to try your product, our conversion rate's about 15% for the premium tool, and then about 3% actually upgrading to a paying customer. So basically, if you can convert this, essentially these newsletter subscribers, 0.05%, just doing some quick math, is, I don't even know, that's like times, or what is it, 15,000 times lower conversion rate than like average just to break even. It's absurd kind of how effective and basically how low the bar is to be able to drive performance when you're using this strategy. Just a little bit more kind of homework on that quick math that we did. Oh, and this is really exciting too. So this is just strictly if you're trying to sell something. We added this slide here because this really shows that like when you are building your newsletter, again, we talked about these different ways to monetize. This is why we have that first section. Because if you're running a newsletter that is at arm's length from your main business, you can sell different types of advertising. You can monetize in different ways. Essentially, if HubSpot is running that newsletter and they're getting $2 subscriptions, they can basically recoup all of their costs for their subscriber growth with an ad, which then means that their growth is either cost neutral or even negative CAC, which is obviously the dream of any business, is to have your CAC go negative, which means you're making money every time a user signs up. It's not actually costing you money. So essentially, again, combining these concepts together, we create that quick math around how you can basically, the LTV of a customer, subscribers, the newsletter revenue itself, and new total lifetime revenue. This is basically showing that instead of it even being a cost center as a newsletter, your newsletter can actually increase your overall lifetime value by a quarter or more. So again, HubSpot did this buying the hustle, genius move. We're going to skip through a lot of these slides, just shows you these examples. You guys are going to get this deck afterwards, so you'll be able to see the details of these different pages, but they still monetize using their own branding. So it's like they have the editorial stuff, and then every once in a while they'll drop in an asset where it's, here's, get this video. And these act as signals. These just act as buying signals. So when somebody clicks one of these things or downloads the checklist, it pings their marketing team, their sales team to say, hey, maybe this person's interested and maybe this is the time. But the idea is they target these young professionals who are interested in business topics so that down the road, when it is time, when somebody in their organization says, hey, we need to evaluate a new CRM, Salesforce sucks, what should we do? I've heard that there's all of these platforms out there. There's Copper, we could use Airtable or whatever. This person who's been reading The Hustle could raise their hand and say, hey, wait, have we looked at HubSpot? Because they have that brand awareness and marketing insight. Another example here would be CB Insights. So they sell premium data and research around companies. They run an excellent newsletter that's very information dense, but essentially showcases the service that they provide without being salesy. This is the data that they provide to users, and they're basically giving it away for free within the narrative of this kind of newsletter. And it demonstrates the value that, one, the platform holds if you potentially pay for it. But even without paying for it, it's providing a ton of value to whoever's reading it. Again, they have that, and then they push to a free trial. And essentially, again, imagine how much it would cost if you were running ads to say, hey, you're running social ads to try to generate demand for a data product. It's like, one, where are you going to place those ads? Pretty much only LinkedIn, where things are expensive. Like you could try, or Meta and other platforms, but for B2B, they're just not that great. Whereas with a newsletter, if you're promoting a newsletter, that can be promoted across any platform, especially with when you think about who your audience is and you create those ads the right way, you can promote across any channel and the economics are going to be much more favorable for you. So we're talking about how we're going to acquire users that you can then nurture into leads. The third part is not all of those users are going to become customers, but in the meantime, before they become customers, there's a play for education and retention, which then primes the ground. So the people who are going to become your customers, it makes the sales process easier. For the people who aren't customers, there's still the opportunity to turn them into evangelists. So taking those users who may be interested, but maybe they don't have the funds, maybe they're not quite the right fit, turning them into the people where when their coworker says, hey, or their friend who they're networking with says, hey, I've been really looking for this XYZ. Somebody says, oh, you got to check out this newsletter. You got to check out this person. I've been following them for a while. It's not for me, but you can check them out. Cool. Real quick, I'm going to just ask Tony real quick. How are we looking on questions? I see there's a pretty active chat. I see you're answering those questions, Tony. Anything that I should address? I know that we're not super long on time. I could take a second. Yeah, for sure. So Tony's telling me there's some questions here about commitment level, how often you should send. Generally, I would say weekly is probably the best. No, you can do every 2 weeks, but getting in the habit of a weekly newsletter is really solid. I think daily or multiple times a week is really tough and is usually going to be most successful if you are a full-time newsletter creator. Once you see the strategy, if it works for your business, then maybe that's something that you do. You hire a writer who can actually focus on it full time. But part of this is that the send frequency plays into that feedback loop. This is one of the things I talk to, usually they're non-business users who are checking us out. Anybody who's starting a newsletter, when you start, there's one goal, and that goal is to find product market fit, or as we call it, content market fit. As business folks, you probably have heard that term in the role of startups, where you have a service, you have to figure out like how to position your service for your particular audience, figure out how your service can fit their needs. It's exactly the same with a newsletter. The kind of mechanics are a little bit different. The mechanics are figuring out, okay, what is the channel in which I'm going to distribute on? How are people going to find my newsletter? And then when I get in front of that user, what language am I going to use? What topic am I going to use? A lot of that comes from understanding your niche and your audience. And that's really the baseline. You have to understand who you're talking to very specifically. I use this example in all of my webinars. My girlfriend has some dietary restrictions. She's pescatarian, gluten-free, and dairy-free. If I was going to start a nutritional newsletter and I just said, I'm going to write about nutrition, you would probably understand that sounds absurd because there are people who think that keto is the best thing ever. And there's people who would be horrified and are vegan because they say eating animals is like terrible for your health. So just saying I'm going to write about nutrition would be so broad, nobody would know whether they should even pay attention to me. However, when we go out to eat, if we go out and meet people and my girlfriend meets somebody who says, oh, I'm also gluten-free, dairy-free, and pescatarian, it doesn't happen that often. And when it does, there's this like magic moment where they see each other and they realize that, oh my God, you understand what I've gone through like my whole life of going to restaurants and not being able to be served and, labels lying and all of these different things that go into that lifestyle. So if I was going to start a newsletter targeted at like pescatarian, gluten-free, dairy-free people, I'd have a really clear idea of who I was talking to, the pain points that they experience, and how to speak to them in a way where if that user saw an ad for my newsletter, say, hey, we got gluten-free, dairy-free, pescatarian recipes delivered daily, that person's going to be like, oh my God, I feel seen. I'm going to subscribe right now. And so that is to say, when you're doing this, even if you do serve a relatively broad audience, start off niche, understand who that person is. I mentioned it earlier, but understanding that, okay, if you're a coach, who is your target niche? If it's executives, there's like a whole world of executives out there. Or is it like mid-level VP level? Is it C-level? Within that C-suite is not going to be everyone. Is it CFOs? Is it CEOs? Is it CPOs? Is it CROs? Whatever. And then within that's even too broad in itself. Do you focus on CROs in SaaS have completely different challenges than somebody who might be a sales leader in a manufacturing organization? And they're going to need a totally different approach. And if you can really target and figure out who that very specific user is, everything else around the newsletter pretty much solves itself. If you know very specifically who that person you're trying to reach is, then you know immediately how to speak to them and what they're interested in, what challenges they face, and the content can take care of itself. But as you go through that discovery process, your only job in the beginning is to understand how you find content market fit. And you'll know that just like with a product, when people start to share and your product starts to grow organically, you'll know you've hit that product market fit because you'll have people who find your newsletter through LinkedIn or wherever you're distributing, and they share it with their friends, they share it with their colleagues, they share it with their counterparts who are in their mastermind groups because they're finding so much value in it. And so going back to the original question of how often should you send, it's really hard to get that feedback loop if you're sending less than once a week. If you're sending once every 2 weeks, you get 26 bites of the apple. If you send every week, you get 52 bites of the apple. The key here then becomes when you start using social media to basically use that as your testing ground, you might have 4 opportunities a day, which then turns that 52 opportunities into more than 1,000 if you're using social posts to figure out how to connect with your audience. And it's an overall strategy, but in terms of time commitment, this is not something you should enter in lightly. And I would say the 2 things that doom this kind of strategy are people who say, okay, I'm going to do this, but I'm going to put it on the back burner. I'm just going to commit to it halfway, and I'm not going to resource it appropriately. I'm not going to commit the time or the people to actually creating the content. That's the one thing that dooms it. The second thing that dooms it is trying to make it too on the nose and too salesy and not thinking about what your reader wants to read willingly, instead what you want to say to your reader. It doesn't matter what you want to say to your reader. It matters what your subscriber wants to read about. At the end of the day, if you're attracting it, all that matters is you're attracting that ideal persona. It doesn't really matter what you're writing about, as long as if you're targeting SaaS CFOs, it doesn't matter what you're writing about, as long as what you're writing about is basically what those people want to read and find value in, you're going to be successful. And so again, in that context, you could be, if you're a coach who's targeting SaaS CROs, you could even get more specific, like B2B. Obviously, you probably want to get more specific with B2B SaaS. Like, it doesn't matter what you're writing about, what you're talking about. If that's who your list is, if that's who you're in the inbox and you're capturing attention from, it doesn't really matter what you're writing about. So at the end of the day, it's basically that testing ground to figure out what is compelling. And then within the context of it not mattering what you write about, the value is that list, where then if you are running a coaching business, maybe you sell some inventory to recoup your costs, but maybe 1 out of every 10 or 1 out of every 5, you sponsor from your own business. Or maybe all of them you sponsor from your own business, but it just looks like a sponsorship. And in that way, you're reaching the right audience, you're gaining that awareness in front of them, and then you're really implementing Gary V's jab, jab, right hook strategy. That's a book if you want to read it, Jab, Right Hook. Incredibly valuable principles there. If you haven't, recommend picking that up. I'm not getting compensated for recommending that. So real quick, going to keep moving along. So in terms of education, the objective here is to remain top of mind and continuously educate your prospects and your subscribers. This utilizes existing assets to drive higher adoption of your product or service. So this can be users who are already customers. This is people who might become customers. This is people who will never become customers. Primes them for being purchased to, primes them for evangelism, primes them for retention, because it basically keeps them top of mind and reminding them how value are and that perceived brand affinity. Robinhood does this really well. We mentioned them at the beginning of the call. They had a property they called Robinhood Snacks. I think it's now called Sherwood Media. As if anybody doesn't know what Robinhood is, it's a trading app that basically has democratized retail stock and crypto trading, where no fees, you log into your app, super clean user interface, makes it very easy to trade. So how do you use a newsletter to promote an app where you're doing trading? What they do is they have a daily business newsletter that talks about different public companies in the market. So in this case, the Snapchat was the subject here in this one. You have Chewy or Chevy. Chewy is a different company. Definitely a very different topic, but they have Chevy here. You have all of these different companies here. So what they're doing is they're providing insight, they're providing news, they're providing kind of information to their users, because somebody who is more informed, who has these ideas around how a company is going to do, to then open up the app and then go trade on that information that they're being provided. So in this case, they have the Robinhood logo here, but it's called Sherwood Snacks, Digestible Financial News. They even sponsor it. This is a perfect example. This is run by Robinhood, but they're sponsoring it by Masterworks, which is an alternative investing tool. You can invest in like art and stuff like that. So even though it's from Robinhood, they're not being so in your face around, you have to see the Robinhood logo here and there and everywhere and keep being reminded that this is Robinhood. They're being sponsored by somebody who is ostensibly a competitor. But the idea being like, when you're giving your users this valuable information, they're more likely to then go and use it and trade on it. And then when they trade, that's when Robinhood makes money. So Robinhood indirectly earns revenue when users buy and sell shares on their app. Sending that daily newsletter keeps them top of mind each morning when the market opens. The content itself is business focused and educates the core users to make better, more informed trades. And they're building stronger trust and stronger brand over time. And of course, at the end of the day, with a SaaS app, it's all about stickiness. It's about getting them back into that app and using it day after day and building that habit. And it checks all of those marks. Buffer is a social media scheduling tool. Similarly, they run a similar playbook where they're running content around social media. So different tips and strategies and news from the space that can then inform and educate their audience, who are marketers, onto how to do better marketing. And at the end of the day, if a marketer is doing more active social media management by experimenting with new content formats and posting more content, in this case, they're going to, if they are a Buffer customer, they're going to be using Buffer more and more often. It also serves as an opportunity to show that Buffer knows what they're talking about, knows what's going on in the market. And even if I'm sure they probably have some sort of integration here around sharing new features that Buffer may offer to support these use cases. In this case, they have some posts of the week. Oh no, this is Brex. I'm sorry. So Brex Business Banking, great partner. Where's my water bottle? My water bottle is in my bedroom. I have a Brex water bottle. It's like a $40 water bottle they gave us. It's super nice. Love Brex. Great company. They do business banking. In this case, again, they're using this to basically promote. And Brex is on beehiiv. Buffer is not. and neither is Robinhood. So when I use these examples, these are not all examples of companies that are on Beehiiv. CB Insights is not. I pretty much none of these are actually on Beehiiv. So when I share these examples, these are not just like homegrown examples that are like, hey, this is what Beehiiv did. This is the strategy. And certainly we've had conversations actually with most of them. Most of them are doing them internally. So it doesn't necessarily make sense to do like an external vendor. But of course, they were all interested because this is a very central part of their strategies of what we had to offer. And we can basically deploy the strategy for everyone. 4-step playbook. This is what we're going to leave you with. I know we're coming up short. So we've covered the use cases and how to execute on these. This is what we'll send in the post call. But essentially, the step-by-step process to build the foundation, launch your newsletter, grow that list, and then monetize it, and then rinse and repeat. I don't know if I have the visualization here, but basically there's like another loop here that goes from monetize to really just grow the list. It's a circle here. It's just like a flywheel that gets bigger and bigger. So here, landing page design, newsletter design, content strategy, and then pixels for campaign optimization. This goes super in depth. So building the foundation. This will be a little bit out of date soon because we have a brand new website builder that makes the visual design wave more flexible on the website. But our newsletter designer is among the most customizable on the internet. There was a time when I first joined the company when there's some designs that I saw that we couldn't replicate. Today's world, it's been about a year and a half since I've seen a single design that we weren't able to replicate pixel for pixel. Regardless of how creative your design team is, we can still basically represent and put your brand like best foot forward. All of these designs, I would say, the thing is, all of these designs that you've seen here, you could replicate in Beehiiv in about an hour. Every single one of them. We've done it for a lot of these because we have like tutorials where we're like, hey, here's how you can replicate the hustle one. So cool. Landing page and newsletter design. Cool. Building a foundation. So content strategy. Okay, yeah. So we don't go into specifics in some of these, but building the foundation. So landing page, you need a landing page where you're going to capture your leads. You're going to need the newsletter design that's going to be branded and have that great tone of voice. Content strategy. This is when we talk about like how often you're sending, what your target audience is, how you're going to distribute your content through social media, whether it's X or Twitter or LinkedIn, TikTok, whatever. And then we also recommend, of course, you guys are marketers in some ways, adding pixels for campaign optimization. The earlier you do that, the more data that they can receive. We have incredibly robust internal tools where we do real-time event data layer event tracking. So when somebody subscribes, we fire an event that can be captured by all of these marketing tools that contain a hashed version of the user's email that you can pass back to the platforms and do advanced matching with all in one step. So we ask about differences between us and other platforms. One, full control of your design. There's really, as far as I know, the only no-code tool that really has as much design flexibility as we have. Full integration with all of the main ad platforms to optimize your campaigns. We will soon, in some ways, if you're on the Max plan, we currently have this like very flexible website builder. And in that way, that's also something that nobody else has. Cool. Launching the newsletter. So you're going to upload your customer lists, up your existing email lists. If you are taking the approach of launching a newsletter aside from like your normal business newsletter list, I would recommend, and the best practice would be to basically request explicit opt-in from your users to join that newsletter. So that can be done in two ways. One, we have a tool called Magic Links. We also have a recommendations tool. Actually, Magic Links would be the way to do it. If you're using a different platform than Beehiiv, which you probably would be if you're launching the newsletter from scratch, we have 15 different platforms that you can basically do a one-click subscribe. You drop the link into your existing platform. And if a user clicks that, there's no additional work they have to do. They'll automatically be subscribed. That's how we would recommend getting that initial seed list over, because you don't want to just upload your entire list of people who may be dormant, may not want to hear from you, may not really care. If you start and take the approach of growing with that kind of organic opt-in mind, you're going to have a much better outcome in terms of engagement and people actually wanting to stick with your list. So then you're going to write your first post and hit send and collect feedback. From here, growing your list, organic traffic. This is posting on social media, posting on your own socials, creating a social media page for your channel, depending on who you want to be the persona from. It really comes down to your voice. Some folks use a brand account. Some folks want to be from them personally. If you're a coaching business, you probably want to be from the coach account. If you're a SaaS company, maybe you want to do both. We do both. We have all of our employees. We have 50 something employees who are on X and LinkedIn who like promote stuff and share stuff and do thought leadership. Our CEO is one of them. We also have a house account that has over 100,000 followers across all platforms. And so we definitely use both. Paid traffic. So this is classic ads. We covered this in the beginning. Running paid ads to your target audience with ads, encouraging people to subscribe to the newsletter, get some content, get whatever you're offering them. Lead magnets are a great approach here. So offering a lead magnet, and that in turn basically getting them into the newsletter. Incredibly valuable strategy that I'm sure I don't have to tell most of you guys about, but whatever is interesting to your users, whatever is going to provide value to your subscribers, you can take that approach and turn that into a lead magnet to capture subscriber growth. One of the differentiators with beehiiv, we do have a built-in referral program that'll track referrals made by users to other users, and you can drop it into your newsletter with one click. You can even offer rewards like t-shirts or stickers or free access to a premium subscription, what have you, all with just a couple clicks is included in the subscription. All of the data kind of is encapsulated, so there's no juggling multiple different platforms and making the data work between all of those. And then recommendations is a feature that is native to beehiiv that allows you to partner with other publications and basically cross-pollinate or recommend your newsletter to other folks and then for them to recommend your newsletter to their subscribers. If any of this is interesting, we actually have webinars that go on every week. We have, I think Tony shared the archive, where we actually have full webinars that are based on these growth strategies, which is why I'm going through them pretty quickly. But so customers, readers go into your main list. So just examples of how some organic growth can look through SEO. Go ahead, Tony. Yeah, there's a couple different ways. It depends on the specific example. Let me handle that question, Lewis, from the chat. Sorry, Tony, you just flagged your question. I'm going to handle that in just a minute. Let me finish up these. I'm going to run through them really quickly. And so we can get to the Q&A. We'll go a couple minutes over. We'll go 2 minutes. So monetize your product. So 4 different ways. Your product, we have Boosts, which is like a newsletter native monetization channel. You can do it through our ad network or paid subscriptions. All of these are native to beehiiv. Nobody else has an ad network. Nobody else has Boosts. And other platforms have subscriptions, but very few of them have them internally integrated. And of course, you can sell your own product anytime you want. So your product, different examples, ads, different examples, Boosts. This is basically a marketplace where you can promote other folks' other newsletters and get paid when your subscribers also subscribe to their newsletter, paid subscriptions, and then the monetization growth loops. You take your money that you're making from monetization, feed it into growth. The costs are offset by monetization within the newsletter, rinse and repeat, sell some products, have a massively positive ROI and very small CAC. Newsletter becomes one of your best, most performant sales channels. So you'll get this again. You can review these last couple slides. This is just tying back together everything that I've just talked about. I don't think that actually works anymore. So give it a try. It might not work. So the question here is from Lewis in the chat, basically tying together the newsletter, in that case with Sherwood Media, to the Robinhood app. So in that case, be interested to know who's running SaaS company, who's running a SaaS business. In that case, you'd be subscribed by signing up to Robinhood. And so in that case, and obviously you manage your subscription if you don't want to be through the app. But in that case, what you're doing, this is more of a halo play where they are putting out this content and it's essentially going to be more of a halo effect that provides that content. They're certainly tracking who their most engaged users are. They're tracking the deep links if somebody clicks a link and it takes them to the Robinhood app. And they're certainly associating like open rate and click-through rate and all of these engagement metrics with usage in the app to figure out who are their best customers and the impact that's having. When we're talking about more common use cases that are like not SaaS based, if we're talking about HubSpot, for example, I showed those examples actually specifically. When you have the newsletter, it's like I said, you're not necessarily selling in every single one, but there are plenty of opportunities where within your newsletter, you can promote your service or whatever. If you're doing an editorial thing about the news and you're providing commentary on the news for a specific audience, you can place a native ad that says, hey, if you're interested in leveling up your professional capabilities or whatever your pitch is, you obviously want to put together a nicely copywritten blurb, you can include that. But I wouldn't necessarily try to make a sale for a service in that way. You might say in your newsletter, hey, created this checklist for career progression or an organization checklist, or we're offering an audit of XYZ. Whatever is interesting to your users, traditional lead magnet, can be offered within that newsletter. And when somebody takes that, they're obviously second level opting in. They're indicating that they're raising their hand of that interest, that they're seeking whatever you're offering. And obviously that lead magnet should align with the service you're offering and provide an opening for you to get in touch. If you're offering a checklist, give them the checklist and give them a follow-up and say, hey, like I'm interested in, you downloaded the checklist, would want to offer you a free 30-minute consultation to see how you can do XYZ with your organization. You get them on the phone and then you can talk them through your presentation. But in this case, that entire process, the skids are greased by them being subscribers to your newsletter. If they know that you're the one sending the newsletter and then you offer them this checklist and then you offer them the opportunity to get on a call, they're way more likely to get on a call with you if they've been receiving emails from you for 6 months because they trust you. They've been getting that content day in and day out. And then once you're there, again, they know you. They're not a random face. You're not just some stranger who's trying to steal some of their time. there's somebody that they've gotten to know. And so your chances of being able to close someone in that context are much, much higher. This was CB Insights. The other example, again, was HubSpot. They have their main newsletter. They do sponsor it. So it's like the hustle and they have the logo up here. And then when they have these native ads where it's like top 5 ads of 2013. So they click this and it sends them to a video. This is purely a signal to the sales team. I mentioned it before. You can see who clicks a link. You can see the exact email. So it's if somebody is in this audience and maybe I don't know what the purpose of them trying to, probably to sell the marketing product, to be honest. It's if you are looking at the top 5 ads of 2023 in your HubSpot and you're looking at who clicked on those, then you can basically be pretty reasonably confident that the user who clicked on that could be a candidate for the marketing product that HubSpot offers. So then what that can do is kick off remarketing campaigns, display campaigns, or whatever, social campaigns around the marketing product. Could initiate a workflow that then they click that link and then it enters them to an automation where then they get an email saying, hey, look, saw that you were interested in the top ads of 2023. Curious if you've evaluated how marketing with HubSpot could help improve your marketing performance. If they're looking at the top ads of 2023, they want better ad performance. If your platform or your service provides that, then there's some relevance. And so not that it's going to be 100% hit rate, but that kind of relevance and context can be a great signal that otherwise you just don't have. You don't have any signals. You're flying blind. You're just showing people the same ads over and over again with absolutely no responsiveness. I hope that answers the question. I know we're a couple minutes over, so I really appreciate your time with going over with me. I know Tony has been managing questions in the chat. And if there's any more, I'm happy to stay a little bit longer and answer some questions. I know, Tony, that we have a call with the team. I'm happy to be a little bit late for that. To answer some questions, there's a lot of stuff to go over. I think he's going to tell me some stuff in my ear. Go ahead, Tony. To be completely, so he asked about the resource here. This was actually based on the presentation that Tyler gave at Traffic and Conversion Conference. It's been updated since then, but that was something we gave away at TNC. I would have to check in the archive of what that is that we're giving away. I'd have to go back and see what that was. Cool. We had a question. One that Tony, I was just referencing, was what that resource is at the end of it. As I said, we gave this presentation at TNC. I don't remember off the top of my head what it was. I will look it up and we will include that with the follow-up, which will be found where Tony dropped it, but you'll also get that link by email. The other question was, how does beehiiv integrate? So I know there was a question in the beginning about high level. We have a completely open API. We have webhooks that can integrate across platforms. Our webhooks both accept, you can enter people into automations via API. You can also kick off webhooks as part of the automations flow. You can say, if a user takes a certain action, send a webhook somewhere else. So that is to say, our platform integrates data in, data out with any other platform that has an API, which is basically 10,000, 20,000 different tools. Now, we also integrate with all of those functionalities, integrate with HubSpot and Make and a host of other no-code tools. The question specifically was, how easy is it? It takes a little bit of time, just like any other integration would, but all of it can be done without a developer and without code. Certainly, if you have a developer or development team, maybe it's a little bit quicker. You don't have to integrate Make and Zapier into your tech stack. In some ways, beehiiv is also meant to be like that standalone kind of newsletter tool in itself. So a lot of what we build is meant to be encapsulated. So like I said, we're launching this website. We're launching the website builder. We have the newsletter platform. We have the ad network. You can view your subscribers and keep track of their data internally inside beehiiv. Our CRM capabilities are not on par with something like a HubSpot. I'm not going to pretend that we are. That's just not where the product is focused at this point. So if you have a really robust CRM integration, you probably want to keep that, but you can do a two-way sync with beehiiv really painlessly. But in terms of having a website, having your newsletter all in one place, like our goal is basically to be able to replace the web flows and the WordPresses of the world with a single platform and really streamline that user experience and streamline that tech stack. But yeah, if anyone has any specific questions, Tony, can you drop my email in the chat? ej@beehiiv.com. It's super easy to remember. I'm happy to interact with anybody here who wants to seek a follow-up. I believe that, I don't remember what it is. I believe that the growth tools team have a code if you guys want to. I wonder if we can find it for you guys. Yeah. Got it. Yeah, cool. Sorry. So Tony's coming through. This is why I have Tony here, because he is just so clutch. We created this Creator Growth Almanac. It's for our owned publication called Creator Spotlight. So just like HubSpot has the Hustle, we have Creator Spotlight. That publication is a little bit focused towards creators. But what I will say is that all of the content in that almanac is completely applicable to pretty much any business. It's just like our audience in that case is typically creators. But Tony and I both felt really bad about that QR code not working. I'll have to look into that for the next time we make this presentation. But we wanted to send you home with something that is exclusive access. Check that out. Again, let me see if we can grab this real quick. But I think Growth Tools, if they haven't already, there's probably a code. We can give it to you that if you do want to try out beehiiv, 20% off for your first 3 months. If you notice, maybe it's me being a bad marketer, but I hate giving people the hard sell. I've been doing this for 3 years and our product is the best in the market. And so in some ways, I've just really never felt, it's just not really been my place to need to really push people into doing it. I don't want to force anybody to do anything. If this sounds interesting, if this sounds like it could help your business, I know it can. It has for lots of other people. I hate when I'm hard sold and when people just try to force me into something and be like, you have to use this thing. That always chafes me and makes me push back. Would love to have you on beehiiv. Happy to help support you in your business, and would love to have you join thousands of people who are making huge changes to their lives through their businesses. With that being said, Tony, could you drop my email in there as well? Oh, you did. You did. I got it. Cool. I'm going to show this on the stream real quick. If you guys have any questions that I can answer personally, I'm happy to put on my growth hat for anyone. And within reason, I might have to, if it becomes a 10 email thread, I might have to cut you off. But I'm happy to answer any specific questions you have about beehiiv. And we really appreciate your time, the 20 of you guys who stayed for the extra 10 minutes. Love doing these. It's why we do them, because we love interacting with folks like you, people building businesses, changing their lives, providing value to the world. And so a little round of applause for you guys. Thank you for your time. Tony, thank you for your time. He's a pro. He's the best. He makes it all possible. And I want to give a shout out, even though they're not here, to Cody Duncan and Brian Harris of the Growth Tools team for giving me the opportunity to share with you guys. It's been an amazing partnership we have with them, and love this cross-pollination. They're giving a presentation to our team later this week. It's got 250 RSVPs. They've always packed the room. So really excited for the opportunity. Thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you guys on beehiiv. Regardless of whether you choose us, look forward to seeing what you guys build. Let me know and we'll connect offline. I'm at EJ_beehiiv on X, Edward White on LinkedIn. And if you find me on Instagram, I won't accept. I'm private, so and I keep that for family and friends. So if you want to connect, that's how you can find me digitally. With that said, have a great day, everyone. Appreciate your time. Have a great week.